They who navigate little streams and shallow creeks know but little of the God of tempests. But they who do business in great waters, these see his wonders in the deep. And then he said, those who take small risks experience a small God. Those who do business in great waters experience a great God. And then he said, in regards to Borden, here was what was found in his journal before his death. No reserves, no retreats, no regrets.
Welcome to the Abundant Journey podcast, where we talk with incredible entrepreneurs who give world-class advice from their own journeys. I'm your host, Nick James, and I'm a commercial banker turned business owner, along with my co-host, Nick Offenkamp. We want to help you grow and scale your business while not losing sight of what matters most. Join us as we learn from the experts what it takes to grow a $1 million business.
What is up, everybody? My name is Nick, here with my amazing, it's weird to call you the co-host. You're always the number one host, Nick Zalk. And we are joined by Hunter Sprague. I'm sure you get this question.
Sprague.
Dude,
apparently I'm a glutton for punishment with weird names. So,
yeah. Well, Sprague. You're talking to a guy with the last name of Offenkamp, so you can only imagine all of the weird pronunciations that I've gotten of that. But Hunter, you have started the Monolith Movement, which is amazing. I love what you're doing there is in terms of the inspirational message that you're sharing, the coaching that you're doing. I mean, it's fitness, it's theology, it's life. You got a lot going on there. You're making some big transitions coming out of a ministry job, and now you're doing this coaching business full time. I'm super excited for our audience to get to know about you, to get to know about your story, about what you're building. But maybe let's just start with, hey man, what's a day in the life right now look like, or a day in the week?
Oh man, yeah. So we were talking before this. This is day one of like full time with this venture. So, and half of this day is me being, just a dad. So I got two little girls with me at home right now. So took my son to school. So man, a lot of this, it's kind of already like what I hoped it would be. It's just like, man, it's margin. It's like, I'm on my own schedule. I'm doing what my family needs me to do. And so, priority number one is just being a good dad, a good husband. And so thankfully I've kind of found this route that allows that to happen where, again, there's a level of control and sovereignty in that, which is both terrifying and really freeing. And so, but today, I got this, I'm excited about this. I got some sales calls. I got, some other stuff like that. So, it'll hopefully be, a lot of margin to take care of myself and my family and, my clients and, just hopefully getting people on board, getting guys healthy. So
100%, man. Well, I'm so honored that on day one of being full-time in your new endeavor that you'd share some of that time with us. Talk to us about Monolith Movement and what the vision is there, what you're doing, and what you're excited about.
Yeah, so it goes way back. It was funny. I was sharing some of this stuff on my Instagram on my last day of my ministry job, just looking back through all these old notes I had in my phone. And I've kind of been, wrestling with this, calling, assignment, all this stuff for a while now, and I was looking back over these old notes and seeing, I would just put these little notes in of like, man, it just makes me so excited when I get to consult somebody and like coach them and help them like get fit. Here's an idea for a diet. Here's what you should do lifting wise, like cardio wise, some lifestyle stuff. Let's talk about testosterone. Let's talk about all this stuff. And it was kind of this spark in me of like, man, I really, really like that. Cause I had kind of been on that journey for a long time. I mean, most of the last 10 years kind of on and off and over time just kind of saw like this weird thing of like, I was staying on the path and a lot of other people were kind of like on and off the path, like all the time, And so it just created this weird thing in me because I'm one of those guys, like I find something I like and I just go hard, like, and it's, guns or bow hunting or, like whatever it is, cigars, whiskey, like whatever it is, like there's just, if I find a thing that I really like I go all the way in. And, but over time realizing like, man, fitness is the thing that's been constant for a long time that I'm like, I've never really like kind of fallen out of or been like, yes, like that was really cool. And I still like it, but I just don't do it as much. So, and so really a lot of this, it was kind of that foundation, but then I think coming through COVID, especially seeing where COVID got a lot of people mentally, even if you never got sick, right? Like there was all these people where coming out of that kind of returning back to some sense of normalcy, people were just like in a daze, man, just like apathetic, just sad. I was hearing more and more anxiety, depression, burnout, like you name it, just all these things, right? And so it kind of just became this very obvious felt need, of man, this is where a lot of people are at in the church, in society as a whole, 100%. But it was just kind of sad to see that be so heavy and prevalent in the church as well. And so, for me, it was just like, well, okay, like here's the opening. Like I can really help this. I think that fitness in my life has been a massive gift, for multiple reasons. It hasn't just been like building a physique and bodybuilding. Like absolutely it's that, but it's also meant a lot more to me just in my development and my health and my leadership and my clarity and all these things. And so, it really just became this thing where I was like, man, we need to use that in the church. We need to be at least talking about that. And so Monolith was just this thing of like, let's just have the conversation. There was really no hope or idea of, I'm going to go, this is going to be my full-time job, or like, I'm going to make money off of this. I really had no idea. I was like, maybe I'll sell an ebook, or like a t-shirt or something at some point. And over time, like several months in, I got connected with a guy, and he, I was kind of just having that same conversation. Like, dude, what is this? Like, what do I do with this? And he was like, I think you should coach, dude. I think that's the route. And I was like, I've never thought of that, but okay, like, let's try it. And so he helped me kind of get rolling and get started. And so, little by little, just getting clients. And at first it was just like people I like kind of knew or knew more directly, or, and so it was just this very like word of mouth thing, and it went really, really well. And I loved it. And so then it kind of grew of like, man, I really, there's something here, because it's one thing to have this idea and the framework and the potential of it is just kind of in your head, right? It's all in abstract. Yeah. It might be the greatest plan in the world, but it's still just in abstract, right? And so then to see it in practice and in reality, and like this actually works for people, like that was a pretty wild thing. And so I kind of turned that corner, and then it was turning the corner of, these are all guys that I kind of know, or at least like respect the church I'm a part of. And so it's an easier sell, right? So then it was turning this corner of like these random dudes that I would never otherwise meet coming to me and be like, dude, I want in, I want to go. And so it just has grown. I've been, as a business, this thing is barely a year old, and it just grew a lot over time, to the point where I was like, man, I really got to make a decision here. I can't keep up with both of these things, and both my ministry job and this business. And so, yeah, it's been wild. It's been a lot of wrestling, of like, this seems really scary. I've never been an entrepreneur. I've never, done anything at this scale by any means. I've been in full-time ministry my entire adult life. And this is, a very different reality. And so, just wrestling through that stuff, getting a lot of wisdom, talking to a lot of people. And it just became abundantly clear, like, man, this is super affirmed in me. It's working. The results are there. The potential is there. And it's one of those things where, I say this all the time. It's like very scarcely do you find something that you absolutely love and are passionate about and would do for free that also can not only just provide for your family, but potentially be a better reality than we ever even imagined, for ourselves. And so it's one of those things where it's like, I would be an absolute idiot to not just give it the old college try for a little while, and just see. And so, yeah.
100%, man. I love that. I Part of the reason I was so excited, I love what you're building, but it's also just amazing to be able to sit down and talk with someone like yourself who's right in the process of making that jump of like, okay, you're a year in of really building out this coaching and it has taken off. And so now you really got to do the risk assessment of, okay, am I going to bet it all and go after this full time? I'm curious, just how have you approached that fear, that risk? Like, what are the things that are keeping you up at night, and what are the things that you're telling yourself to say, yeah, I got to go all in, or at least got to give it a try?
Yeah, that's a great question, man. I think I've naturally always been like a very like the vibe and like the vision and like the brand, like that stuff comes really naturally to me. Like that's the part. And it's kind of a lot of that's just so intangible, right? I'm an artist at heart. That's what I've always done. It's just every creative thing you can imagine. And so for me, it was this process of getting down to, at the end of the day, this is just math. It's literally just math. It's inputs and outputs. It's, and I've never been a spreadsheet kind of person, but I've had really great coaches that have helped me. And, there's my little girl. Sorry.
That's awesome. No worries at all. No need to apologize.
But I've had some really good coaches that have helped me in that, just to kind of, it's like, hey, keep that sense of like, of vision and, aesthetics and brand and marketing. But also, hey, at the end of the day, it comes down to it's all data, no drama, and so just kind of getting in my head over time and building these systems to where, yeah, like I said, it's literally just inputs and outputs. And so it's been kind of morphing my brain into this reverse engineering. So, okay, if I need to hit this number, then that means I need to get on this many calls and I have this level of close rate. I need to have this many conversations like in social media and just all these things. Like there's this whole spreadsheet and I have all the data. And so that over time, that gave me a lot of peace of like, I'm not just at the mercy of everything that's going on around me. Right. And I think that's probably where a lot of guys are stuck because they're still in that kind of 9 to 5 mentality of like, well, if I get fired, my only hope is I go and get hired by somebody else. Right. And I think what you're seeing out there that's super encouraging is you're seeing a lot of guys are like, no, I just want to build a super valuable skill that I'm not at the mercy of anybody. I'm not like, I can just go and do what needs to happen. And so a lot of it was kind of killing this scarcity in me that, I mean, that it's an unintended thing that happens in ministry a lot of you just kind of get it in your head. Nobody tells you this, but you kind of get it in your head of like, man, will always be like, okay, I guess, but not great. It'll always be tight. It'll be tough. And to the extent that I think for a lot of people, they take that and they're like, it kind of, I know it has for me in the past where it's like, it becomes this sense of like righteousness, of like, oh, I'm suffering for the ministry. And I think we're at this like really crazy place in time right now where it's just like, dude, there's so many ways to build wealth and make money. And it's not just this like 1-to-1 lever pull of like, I do this amount and I get this out. It's like, dude, it could be a 1 to 100, kind of transition and ratio of like the return you're getting for what you're doing. And so it was a lot of that. And that had to really be built in me. Like that's again, none of this is natural to me at all, but it was surrounding myself with the right people that are just a few years ahead of me and them just pouring that knowledge in. And it was killing a lot of that fear, of just, and a lot of that because you have that sense of, imposter syndrome and like, who am I to do this? Like, I don't know anything and all this kind of stuff. But when you really think about it and think about your life and everything that's happened in your life and just the things you've struggled with and, how you've always been provided for no matter what, there's kind of this like coming back to like equilibrium and balance and, and just, it's like, that's the track record. Right. And so for me, it was just thinking about God's faithfulness in the past. And every time that I've made a big jump, it's been like the most incredible season. It's been a really beautiful time. And there's I don't know, like that thing just kind of welled up inside of me of like, dude, I want to experience something. Like we were at a prayer gathering yesterday at church, and I was just like, God, I just want to see what you'll do. Honestly, like that's the excitement right now, because it's like everything's not going to be so controlled and like, oh, we're just kind of making it. We know what's coming in, and it's just like you kind of lose this margin for the Lord to just like come in and just provide in a really crazy way. And so for me, that part is really exciting, just to be like, man, I need that daily bread. That's all I got, like that.
Yeah,
that's all I got, man. And so,
and unpredictability apart
absolutely.
from the Lord's faithfulness to you.
Exactly. Yes. So it's a lot of that, man, where it's just like, hey, like I know what I need to do. I know that this is working. I know that the system works. And so it's just do it, but I think, a lot of that fear was kind of compounded with a lot of burnout and a lot of like, I was just running too hard. Like the last several months, it's like I would wake up, try to be a good husband and father, take a sales call, work at the church until lunch, take another sales call, work at the church until 5, take another sales call, and then go home. And you're just like, I'm done, dude. Like I got nothing left. And so there's a lot of that of like, at the very least, like I have to get out of that, just for my sake and sanity and the sake of my family, and so it's kind of cool to see like, there's this side of like this provision of like, hey, I'm going to get you out of that to a healthier spot. And also you're not just like floating, but there's this really amazing opportunity for you to jump into and run towards. So, yeah.
Well, and Hunter, walk me through your thought process. So it sounds like in the beginning of the journey here, it was a passion, and it was something that you and not only have dove into because you enjoy it, but also have been able to dive into it because you have a passion for coaching. So what was kind of that pivot moment for you where it went from, hey, this is something that I just love to do, and the things we love to talk about, we just share with everybody. But there's a pretty big transition in going from, I just love this and I want to spend my time with it, to, oh, I can monetize this. And then walk us through kind of that piece of the journey, and then maybe some things that you had to learn as you dove into this.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, so one of the things that came up really quickly for me was like, it was just this hard realization that things that are free or cheap mean nothing. And so if the highest value is to actually get men to be healthy and be in the best shape of their life, the best mental space in their life, the most belief and expectation in their life, that honestly is probably not going to happen through me just like sharing Instagram posts. It probably isn't, because what I've realized, over time is like 90% of guys out there, won't ever really realize that there's something broken that needs to be fixed, and they could even get to a better spot. But then after that, you have this 5% where there's a lot of guys out there, they kind of get into this whole thing and they're listening to the podcast and they download the PDFs. And so they get all this head knowledge, but they don't do anything with it. Like nothing. They have some semblance of like, I kind of know what I need to do, but they're not actually going to get into the arena, And so for me, it was this kind of thing. It felt kind of like this weird paradox of like, if I'm really going to like have impact, like I have to charge for it. Like there has to be that sense of skin in the game and buy-in. And because without that, I'm just talking to a lot of people that won't do anything with it, And so it's like, and that's great. I think that's worthy to an extent, hopefully it motivates people and inspires people, but I'm not really like, the whole passion at the end of the day is like, I really, really, really want to see lives transformed. And so that was the thing of like, whatever that takes to happen, And so that became this thing of like, okay, this has to be legit. Like there has to be a system and a framework and tools. And, I gotta polish up. I gotta learn a lot. I gotta, build my skills so that I can bring these guys here, because at the end of the day, it was this thing of, there's plenty of fitness content out there, like nobody needs more. But at the end of the day, it's just not worth much. And so for me, I've always been I've been always driven by impact, like high impact. I don't want you to just like be like, oh, that's cool. Like I want to have the skill and the heart and the vision to like really, really take you from one place to another. And so that was a lot of it. And that kind of feels like kind of weird and paradoxical. And it was definitely a struggle for a while, because it was, the whole heart with this was like men in the church, and so that's hard though, because a lot of men in the church don't have money for coaching, they don't, and they might never have that, and so there's definitely been a lot of like hard realities that I've had to face, but yeah, that journey was just kind of, I think it was just coming to the conclusion of like, man, like with my first few clients of like, this is actually working, and this is actually valuable. This is actually doing more than I thought that it would. Because at first it was this kind of like, man, I just want to get guys in the church introduced to like fitness and bodybuilding and those kinds of things. It was kind of like, this very low bar. But then all of a sudden I saw these guys like, dude, I have way more clarity as I do my job. I have way more confidence as a leader. I have, like my wife is like, hey, you look really good, right? And which like, it's like, it's funny, but it's like, dude, that's amazing. No,
like, hey, man, I laugh because it's such a good thing. Yeah,
it's absolutely good. And we don't have to be weird about that. Like,
no,
absolutely,
not at all.
Yeah. And so, there was just these things where it's just like the value of it, I think over time in reality just kept expanding in my head of like, and it, to the point now where I'm just like, dude, fitness is the easy part. Like that's super easy. Like I can, I feel pretty confident I can get you wherever you want to go if you'll be willing to do the work, but the kind of the waves that come out of that, like that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for more discipline in life. Like I'm looking for more clarity in life, more vibrancy and zeal and just an expectation, and joy and lightheartedness and all these things, like that's what I'm really after. And so there was a lot of that where it had to be experienced, because again, that was this thing where I'm like, yeah, I think it's possible that would happen. But then I kept seeing it in reality, like in my clients, and so that really just expanded. It expanded the vision. It expanded the thought behind all of this, where now it's like, man, I mean, again, we're using it as a tool, but there are way deeper waters for you to experience here. And so, and with that, I mean, and there's obviously like a financial component to that, because then it takes me from this place of like, well, I'm not just a fitness coach, like I want you to be completely transformed. And so, yes, like that's more valuable. Like that's worth literally more money. And I'm like, I hate talking about that because it just feels weird. I'm still like, I'm sorry, you'll have to work with me, but seriously, it was that thing of just the reality of like, man, I want to build something that is extremely valuable and it is very worth it for both me and my clients, to jump into and just lead with that, and that's the thing, man. And so, yep.
Sorry, not to cut you out. There's two things in there though that I really love. And one is just the recognition that there does have to be skin in the game. And so you actually do your clients a bit of a disservice if you don't charge, because by charging for your service, you have them truly invested. It's less of an investment in you and more of an investment in themselves, and you're there to facilitate that. Of course, we want that to be worth your time. You're putting in a ton. But then the second piece is really interesting, where you've found that just how connected we are, that the physical has such ramifications on your mental health, your emotional health, your spiritual health. And I think in church world, it's easy to minimize the effect of the body and physicality and the implications that it has for all of the rest of your life. So it's really interesting how you're connecting with particularly Christian men on that physical level, but you're really able to then dive deeper on so many other facets of their life. And I can totally see how that would play out, where you build confidence physically, and that's going to give you then the confidence not only in leadership, but then also in any sort of entrepreneurial dreams or visions that people have, for whether that's as a side hustle or just finding some other way to bolster your own and your family's finances.
Absolutely.
And it's so cool that you're not just talking about it, but that you're actually modeling that, as evidenced by you stepping out and going all in.
That was a big part of this, because I've told my guys for a while, like, man, I would love for you to go through this, like go through my program. And by the end of it, you're like, I'm going to go hire a business coach, or I'm going to go invest into this thing, or I'm going to go get an LLC, and I'm finally going to do it because I feel like it's possible. So there's all of this, it's just the fact of like building a physique. A, nobody does it. Nobody's doing it, but B, you can't buy it. It can't be given to you. Like, you have to go out and you have to be meticulous and faithful and disciplined, and it takes time. But all the while, it's not just, again, just like I said, it's not just a physical change. That's a mental change. You're retraining your brain to be like, man, if I feel called or led to something, I can actually get there. Like, I can actually do it, because as evidenced by what I've done physically. Right. And it does give you that sense of ownership, and like, man, if I can do that, I can do anything, because, and honestly, it makes those other things feel pretty simple. And I've always said, I'm like, yeah, I mean, I don't, just like you said, I don't want to be the guy that's like, yeah, dude, like, go take a risk. Like, you got it, go do it. And then I'm not doing the same thing. I'm not modeling that. And so I've been like, man, I hope that this is kind of a case study in a way for you guys of like, man, this is what it can look like. If you find the right thing and you do it well, and you're in the right room with the right people, like, it can happen, and it can happen really quickly. And so it's just that, again, that expectation. And I think it is absolutely hard in the church, because I think, one of the things that we fight against is honestly, it's Gnosticism, which is like, we would say it's a heresy, but people, like, very sincere Christians believe that all the time, of just like, my body means nothing. Like, it's just going to burn with everything else, and blah, 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 blah. And so you have so many guys in leadership and just in the church in general, where they're honestly, all their eggs are in the basket of my quote unquote heart for ministry, and that's beautiful. Like, you have to have that, but you're going to bump into the reality of living in the United States in 2023. That is true. Mm-hmm. So all of these layers of epidemics that we're seeing of obesity, chronic illness, heart disease, low testosterone, mental health, those things aren't, I say this all the time, but like, those things aren't just like passing over the church. Like, those are happening within the church. And more than likely, one or multiple of those things are going to happen to you if you're not careful. Right. And so it's just the thought of like, man, if I want to run this race well, if I want to get to the end of not just have more years, but better years, if I want to be an effective leader, if I want to keep up with my grandkids at the beach, in 20 years or 30 years, like, dude, that starts right now. And it's not, the longer you wait, the harder it'll be. And you're seeing the gap widen. I mean, I can't imagine what just reality looks like in 15, 20 years. Like, it's going to be insane, and it's going to be really sad, because there are going to be a lot of guys that they didn't take the risk now. They didn't have that vision now, and they're going to end up completely incapacitated, and they're going to have all of these ideas and all this vision and all these thoughts in their head that are going to die in their head, because their physical reality didn't allow them to actually do anything with it. And that's super sad. And so for me, it's like, I want to save as many, not save, that's crazy, but I want to help as many guys as possible, like, avoid that. And there are a ton of spiritual disciplines within this, of like, I mean, that's the truth of like, within this, it's like, you are denying your flesh, like, you're exercising self-control. You're not doing the easy things. Like, it's very hard. It's very uncomfortable. But again, in that, you're just, it's like, man, I'm sowing into something better for a greater reward down the road. Even if that's just being a more present father and husband, like, dude, that's worth it. And so to me, there's a lot of layers here. But it's kind of funny because you look at that from a business perspective of like, dude, there's going to be no shortage of people to help, in the
Right.
future. And it's getting worse year by year. And so, that's a sad reality, but yeah.
I want to actually camp on that for just a minute. You've talked quite a bit here about how the mental side plays into it and how the fitness impacts your mental state. But maybe going to the other side of that coin, you mentioned that 5% of people, this is on their radar, 95% are tuned out to it. And then even within that, we know probably from experience, the starting, the stopping, the new diet, the new routine for a month or two. So I'm kind of curious, maybe twofold. I want you to dive into like what has helped you be a mainstay and keep you going through this. But maybe the other side too, just from a business perspective, is for you, are you targeting for clients that 5% who are ready to go, or are you trying to cast a wider net and try to help motivate people to even open their eyes to it? Where do you focus your time in that regard?
Yeah, I mean, I would say it's probably right now, at least, like it's just me, so I have to be pretty tactical with like where I'm aiming, right? And so there's that's again something I've had to learn of just like, go after people that are ready. At one point, absolutely, I want a lot broader net, but I think, that kind of 5%, there's even something there of like these guys they kind of have that spark of like, oh, self-development, like I need to, level up, whatever. And so I just get very concerned with where they're finding that inspiration, right? Because they're going out to these places where, the manosphere, if you want to call it that, is, I would say it's a religion in itself, easily. I mean, it's this giant list of do's and don't do's and all this stuff. And so for me, I want to have as many people like myself that are like, hey, like, yes, level up and you're ready, but there's a right way to do this and a wrong way to do this. And so there's a lot of that, but I mean, I think, essentially for me, yeah, it's a big thing. That was a lot of my decision to step out of ministry, was just this realization, like, man, I'm not always walking this out in the way that I want these guys to walk it out because I have so little margin. Like I'm basically like, I'm the guy that I'm trying to coach now, in a lot of ways. And so I had to really walk through that, which, looking back, I'm very grateful for it. I'm grateful that I had this really, really intense and really busy season because I was like, but I'm still in the gym. I'm still, not as much as I should be. I'm still keeping up with nutrition, not as much as I should be, but I'm still like, there's kind of this baseline, this minimum effective dose that like, even in that kind of season that I've maintained. And I want to model that that's possible. And now, yeah, it's just, it's the other side of it is just like, man, I am stepping out, into a place where, again, like I said at the beginning of like, I want to really be about it. I want to fully be about it and exemplify these things and lead in these things and be like, man, I'm not going to ask you to do anything that I'm not doing. And so it's worth me reorganizing my life and quitting a job and all these things in order to maintain that sense of peace in myself, maintain this sense of health, mental health, physical health in me, so that I then therefore have something to actually give, right? Of just like, my cup has to be filled. I cannot give what I do not possess. And so there's so much of that of like, I can talk about it all day long, but I don't think that's actually going to be helpful. What's going to be helpful is for me, a guy that's, hey, I'm in the exact same stage of life you are. I'm 31. I'm married. I have 3 little kids. Like, I'm doing all this stuff. I'm trying to serve the church and I'm still doing this, and I have to be able to model that and show what that is actually like, because a lot of guys, they'll go to a coach that's like 20 years old and isn't married and doesn't have kids. And it's just like, dude, you have no idea, bro. You have no idea. And you're telling me to sleep 8 hours. Like, I have a newborn at home, bro. Like that's just literally not a possibility right now. So for me, it's just that thing of like, that's what these guys need, and they need somebody to model it and be about it and not just talk about it, not just talk about it as a theory, or something in the abstract, but it's just like, dude, I'm literally doing it. And I'm willing to do the hard work of getting this down on paper and as a framework for you to follow. And so, but yeah, I mean, the mental side is massive for me. I mean, over time, that's probably become the biggest point for me of like, yeah, like it's really fun. We have the freedom to get into bodybuilding and aesthetics and all these things, but it's also just like, man, I want to, that's the bigger thing for me right now, is just like equipping leaders that are leading businesses, that are entrepreneurs themselves, or leading churches. And it's just like, dude, you have so much weight on your shoulders. And if you're not careful, it will destroy you. And at the very best, you'll be burnt out and hate your life. And at the very worst, like, you're going to hurt a lot of people because of you not investing in yourself in this way. And so I think this is a big thing where, just, becoming an entrepreneur myself and like really kind of getting insight into how that brain works and loving those people and valuing those people and seeing like, man, there are different challenges that you have. It can be a very lonely road. It can be a very stressful road. It can just eat you up, but at the same time, it's there's so many things you can do, just to keep yourself on that path. So
that's one of the things I've loved about your content is just how real life you are, and that either one, you're not a 20-year-old kid who's just doing fitness. You're also not, you look the part of an Olympian, but it's not like you were a full-time Olympic weightlifter who then retired from your Olympic weightlifting career and went straight into coaching, and you've never lived in the real world outside of an Olympic training center. Like everything that you're doing is in the context of everyday life that I'm sure all of your coaching clients, you can relate to them, and that's got to be immensely helpful. I want to hear what it was like, because I remember, we connected years ago, 2019-ish, at a conference, and then I started following you, and I remember it was shortly thereafter when you created the Monolith Movement Instagram page. And I think I was in your first 30 or 40 followers. I'm pretty proud of that.
Yes.
And over the last 4-ish years since you launched it, I mean, it's grown pretty rapidly, but it seems like it's been in the last year-ish that the growth there has really taken off. But you've been consistent in posting all the way along. And so I'm curious, thinking back, what was it like creating in the void those first couple of years where it was slow to get traction? Were there ever points where it was like, this is never going to take, and I'm a fool for doing this?
Yeah.
How did you face some of that?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, man, I think what really helped, I'll have to look. I think it was like February of 2021 maybe, or 2022. I'll have to look. And but I feel like I was posting a lot about this stuff, like on personal. And so that was like a big leap for me, right? Because it was like, what are people going to think? Like, this is kind of weird. I work I work at a church, and I'm posting these like, this is what I'm working out today, and like, here's what this means to me. And I expected a lot of pushback. So I think that was like the hardest thing, honestly, was more the like, what are people going to think about this? Like, are people going to see this as like, he's backsliding, or at least like kind of getting into this like kind of semi-dangerous territory.
There goes
right?
Hunter again with his thirst traps on Instagram.
It's all dudes. I don't, it's all dudes on there. So it's fine. Exactly. Yeah. But I mean, that was the thing, man. It was just such a fear of like, how will I be received in this, for sure. And I still have those people on Instagram where they just do not get it, and they hate what I'm doing, that's how it seems. Right. And it kind of, that stuff can get to you for sure, because you're like, I mean, nobody wants to be idolatrous or like, in some like weird spot. But I, it was definitely a grind. But it was just like, man, I love it. So I'm just going to keep going, and I don't really care, so I think there was this sense of like, it was helpful to start out and not really have much expectation. It was helpful just to be like, we just need to talk about this, because there wasn't this like, I got to go make money, I got to go get clients. I got to go build a following. Like, it was just kind of like, man, I mean, whoever wants to hear about this will come, and it'll be fine. I think the other thing that was really helpful was I'd been out of the design game for a long time. And so this kind of allowed me to get back into designing just for the fun of it, and just creating things that I liked to create, and copywriting, and like, just saying what I wanted to say. So there was a part of it where it was really freeing to be like, cause I think in that time too, especially when I started it, it's like, you're kind of dead in the middle of this weird masculinity conversation, and especially in the church, and everybody's just trying to figure it out, and you're seeing all these crazy things, going on. And it was this thing of like, man, I kind of have to say my piece, I kind of have to say what I really think, because it was really driving me crazy. Just everything I would say would be through this filter of like, I have to sound really nice. I have to sound what you name it, and it was this very like not me kind of thing. And so it kind of gave me this avenue of like, man, this is like really who I am. This is really what I think and believe, and what I want to give to others. And I think that was what really kept me going, because there are absolutely times where it's just like, dude, this is so dumb. Like, what am I doing? This is so silly. But at the same time, it was that road to be like, man, I think this is really important. And I think this, at the very least, this is like causing some little spark in me of like, I'm really excited to share these things, and I think whenever that happens, like, you really need to pay attention to it. You really need to pay attention to it, because the reality is there are a lot of people. I mean, you guys are talking about entrepreneurship. So there are a lot of people out there, majority of people, like, they don't even have anything like that. Like, there's nothing in their life that's like, this is a spark. Like, this is exciting for me. They're just kind of rolling and just taking it, and so wanting to lead in that, and, that's a big deal for me. Like, I want people to be excited, and have something where it's like, man, I can really, really be me and say what I need to say. And, so at the beginning, this really allowed that to happen for sure. Yeah.
One of the things you've talked about on the business side is building systems, surrounding yourself with people who are maybe a few years down the road living it. Yep. And I'm curious how that's tied in, maybe both of those, to not only your journey, but really just kind of what you were saying of like those days where you were feeling like you were going at it alone, and you were asking yourself, hey, is this going to work? Am I doing the right thing? Who was speaking into your life at that time, and maybe who were some of the influential people to help you ramp this thing up?
Yeah, absolutely. There's several people. Like, I have a brother-in-law, Keith, that he's the guy that got me into creative things when I was like a teenager, and he just has always exemplified like, dude, just go and do it, just like be your own boss. Like, and he's done that for a long time so well, and just always pushing me, like whatever it was. It was just like, dude, you got like, for years, and it's like, he was incredible in that way. I always say like, in terms of like the creator in me, like I got started really early because of him. And where a lot of people, like, they weren't ready for a job until after art school, like at a university. And I was like, dude, I was doing this stuff in high school, so like that was a really cool thing. And again, just like this part of like a high value skill that I can do just whenever. If a rainy day comes, like I can jump into that, and I can do photography, design, filmmaking, any of that stuff. I can do it. It's not hard at this point. And so that was always super helpful. There's a guy, Scott Frazier, who was on staff at church with me. He's since jumped out. He got into real estate investing. I mean, he's very much in y'all's world. And he was one of those guys, a few years ahead of me, and got kind of reconnected with him. And, I mean, that blew my mind, because that's where I got a lot of this idea of like, man, it's just inputs and outputs at the end of the day, and thinking through things like that, and him really pushing me, because I talked about that kind of scarcity that comes from ministry. And I think over the last couple of years, as I've been wrestling with all this, and like, man, I'll go apply to this job, or like, I got this offer or that offer. And it was just funny to see my brain kind of expand of like, I remember getting an offer for like $85,000 a year and just like freaking out, like, holy crap. Because that, especially because that would be like, oh, well, in 5 years, you could be at this role that's 200,000. And I was like, oh my gosh, like I can't even fathom that. Like, that's insane to me, and over time you're just like, yeah, I mean, like, like that should be, that should be a low bar, like you should be building the skills that kind of, so it was those guys. I mean, definitely some others where it was just, and it's a lot of guys like having my back, they might not be like entrepreneurs themselves or like all that invested in a Monolith, but they're very invested in me and very invested in like, man, I want to see you thriving and be who you need to be and be who you're called to be. And like, I'm in your corner and I'm going to push you. And I probably annoyed the hell out of these guys for the last like year, because there were so many points where I was just like, what do I do, dude? And they're just like, bro, chill. Like, you're going to be fine, like just, and so I've had to go back and like apologize to all those guys recently, because it's like, dude, I should have listened to you like months ago, and I didn't. I was just very stubborn. And so, but it's kind of having those people that are like long suffering, and they're in it, in your corner with you. Like they want you to thrive. They want you to succeed, and they'll bear the brunt of all of your stubbornness and fear, and they'll always be there, and so I've been extremely blessed to have. And a lot of the other guys were guys that I was on staff with at this church that have since gone out, several of them into real estate, several, into like entrepreneurship and owning businesses. And like the track record is incredible. Like that was what I've told all those guys. Like, it's pretty crazy to see, like, man, you went out and you took a risk, and you've been building this life that you never thought was possible for you. And it's better than you imagined it would be, and it's the cool part of like, and it's not like you're sitting here grieving your time in ministry. You're sitting here like, that time in ministry set me up to do this, to be, a person, salt and light in the world, because you go out there, you start, just the reality of business in the world. And a lot of times it's very cutthroat. It's very like, and I'm just looking at these younger kids kind of coming up into things, and I'm like, y'all can't even talk to people, much less make somebody feel welcomed, and have a sense of hospitality about you. And so it's just seeing these guys like just go and thrive. And it's because they were in a position for a long time where their entire job was self-development and taking care of people and being pastoral and all of these things, and just fighting for excellence. Even when the money was not there, they still were faithful, and they fought really hard to be excellent and do the job. And now they're in this place where like the money is there, and they're taking those same characteristics of like, man, I'm just going to be hospitable. I'm going to be a leader. I'm going to treat people well. I'm going to fight for people's best interest. And they're just naturally set apart in that, And so for me, it was just really cool to kind of have that. I'm like one of the last guys, that was just like, man, I'm going to step out and do this, because I'm like, well, hey, like, you guys walked so that I could run, in a way, or I'm the guy that's going to fail, and you guys are, like at some point somebody's got to, just crash and burn. But I think it's really, it's really cool to see, it's like, man, it's a really good track record, and just being surrounded by people that are, they're just like, dude, like, we got you, and that's really what I want to continue to build. And like, that's the network I want to have, where again, it's hard and it's lonely, but also does not have to be at all. Like it's all right there just to be like, man, we're going to go out and we're going to do big things and we're going to have impact and we're going to hold each other up. Even though we're not on the same staff or on the same team, it's like, man, we're in this fight together. So I think that's super cool.
That's awesome. One, it just speaks to the culture of the church and ministry that you're a part of, that I'm glad that you stated explicitly, like, hey, this is not a bad thing. This is actually a sign of health, that all of these people who are coming through this place, whether it's as members of the congregation or more specifically as staff, that they're cultivating all these skills, and then they're seeing opportunities to use those skills, those gifts as salt and light in the world, and that you're now following in that well-trodden path of mentors and people that have gone before you. I also think it's really helpful what you're talking about, where you've had different mentors, coaches in your own life that have expanded the horizons of possibility in your mind. Like, I remember that, of feeling like, oh man, to be making $85,000 a year with the potential to, get into the mid $100,000 a year by the end of my career, like, I'll be set for life. I haven't given too much time to think about this, but with the crazy inflation that we've seen the last few years, I think it's shaken that for a lot of people of our generation, of just that it's like, okay, if I'm dependent upon a wage growth is not keeping up with cost of housing, cost of inflation. Like, if I ever want to buy a house, settling in at a $90,000 to $100,000 a year job, while that sounded good 10 years ago, it's not going to cut it, especially if you got a wife and kids, it's, and so I think that's also something that a lot of people just need exposure to, of abundance.
Yep. And
I wanted to talk to you. You mentioned thinking about, and going from one job to another, most people see it as more or less a one for one. Maybe I can get a $10,000, $15,000 bump, but you're talking about with what you're building in your business, it's like a 1 to 100, because you have leverage of where you're building a program and you have an online reach. And I think a lot of people don't fully understand the power of leverage and just how wide their reach can be. So I'm curious what your experience has been there, and any thoughts that you have, especially for somebody who's thinking about building or entrepreneurship or how to get ahead. Just what have you experienced in terms of building an online reach and being able to leverage coaching and sort of these knowledge-based products?
Yeah, it's pretty. I think it's hard for our minds to fully comprehend what's possible, like with the internet, with social media, and like that was a really hard thing for me to kind of, like, a hard corner for me to turn, honestly, because I thought that, man, I had to fully explain who I am to these people before they'll, like, buy in. And that might be true for a lot of people, but what I've seen is, like, man, if you can just, the power of, like, the niche especially is massive, because and it's the 1,000 fans kind of principle of, like, you don't, honestly, you don't need this, like, massive thing, but you can build an insane life with 1,000 fans, like, just that, like, that's not that hard to find. And so it's really all about, in your area or in your area of expertise, just like, dude, I want to be the person in that area, right? Like, I want there to be no other option. I want there to, like, this is just what you do, and within that, you kind of start, what I've had to learn is you start just speaking that language, and you really, it's having this insight into, man, where these people are at, what they're struggling with, what they want, what their vision is. And so what I've noticed over time is, like, the more that I can hit onto all of those layers, it's not just the negative thing of, like, you shouldn't be fat, like the low hanging fruit, but it's also, like, the other end of the spectrum of, like, dude, I just want you to be, like, a vibrant man,
Yeah.
because that's what they want. That's what everybody wants. And so so much of that is just like, if you can kind of picture this person, like this is the like avatar, this is like the person that I want to help. And you understand all the ins and outs. You understand their life. You understand their pain points, what they need, what is actually going to be helpful, to them. And even in that, it's just like, I've had to go from, I'm just going to overload you with all of this information that I know. And then they get into the program. They're like, holy crap, like this is a lot, and it's just like, okay, half that crap doesn't even matter right now. Doesn't matter. Like they're, like let's focus on basics, like this will come with time, and so, but I think that, it's really just, it's kind of hard to answer this question, honestly, because it's just like, man, so much of this is in process, of just like,
totally. Maybe one way of kind of dialing in a little bit is, so we haven't even talked about how you're based in one of the greatest cities of all time in Austin, Texas. I love Austin. If I could live anywhere else in the world, Austin, Texas is probably number one, maybe number two on the list. But right. But I'm curious with what you've built online, like how wide is your reach? Are you still mostly working with folks that are Austin based, or are you starting to engage with people that are much like outside of just your physical location?
Yeah. So that, again, that was a big, like, kind of a big milestone, was getting to a place where it's like, okay, it's not just like guys that are like right around me. It's guys in Seattle. It's guys in New Jersey. It's guys in Puerto Rico. It's got, and so like, as of now, I mean, it's like those 4 time zones, which is really cool. I mean, there's guys in Arizona, there's guys in Wyoming, there's guys in, Kansas City, Florida, Indiana. I mean, so that part is really, really cool with what I do specifically. Cause it's like, it can be global, absolutely. Yeah. Like that potential is there. And so there's, again, you just look at that and you're like, I mean, the numbers are absolutely in your favor if you can capture that attention, and so that part has been really, really cool to see, of like, man, I mean, I can work with anybody, anywhere, and again, it's just, and so then it becomes very realistic of like, I'm just looking for this one kind of guy, and that guy is all over the place, and it opens up a whole new world of possibilities for sure.
And I'm really glad you speak to that, because I think, again, with sort of a scarcity mindset, we hear niche down and you start to think like, oh, shoot, like I only know 5 people in that niche. Or when I think about my church or my community, like there's 2 people that might be interested in what I'm offering. But when you expand the mindset to like, no, like there are tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of people within this little niche that I'm creating, but they're just spread out all over. And now with the power of the internet, like I get to reach those folks and create the community of this niche. And I mean, obviously I love how you're doing that with what you built. And I'm glad that you're seeing success and being able to make connections all over the United States and beyond.
But it is awesome. kind of scary. You're like, man, is this too specific? But again, there's no shortage of those people. And again, it's like, I want to be the absolute best at that specific thing, at least for now, because again, it's like, while it's just me, while I'm like solopreneur, like I have to be laser focused. And so for me, I don't want to have like a million products and all these different things I'm doing. It's like, I want to have this one thing that is constantly refined, that is, I'd rather be like Raising Cane's chicken than McDonald's, at this point. It's like, like that's what I want to do. It's like, there you go. We make chicken and we make it really well. So just tell us how much you want. And that's kind of the question. And so that's really what I'm shooting for now. And obviously, like, the idea is that this team can grow. I can hire other people. And then it becomes like, okay, maybe then it's time to like widen that net a little bit. Like, let's give some kind of lower bar things that people can jump onto. And so there's so many possibilities. I mean, that's what's crazy, because like people are always like, dude, when are you going to do merch? And I'm like, I want to really bad. Like, that sounds really fun, but also don't want it to like pull away from, man, like this is going to be the thing, for a while. Like, this is going to be the big heavy hitter. And, but that's kind of always, I've talked about that before, but like the monolith movement, like that movement word was like this really unfortunate, like that was just the handle that was available, like was Monolith Movement. And I was like, God, so lame. I hate that. It's so dorky. But over time, like it was kind of like, it was just this weird, like, I don't know. It's just weird thing, like foresight from the Lord, because I was like, man, there's no thought of like, this will be a community, it was just like, this won't, there's just like one-on-one coaching. Like that's all that this will be for a while. I even have that, at that point. And so, but to see like, okay, it's kind of grown and to the point now where that's been a really fun thing for me to try to figure out, because I'll have guys that come to me that are like, bro, I'm great in terms of fitness and diet. Like I'm on point. Like I've like competed in bodybuilding, or I've done this, but like I need people, like I need the community. Or maybe it's like, I need the like mindset coaching. I need the discipleship. Like I need those other things. And so for me, that's what's been really cool to see, is like, man, there's so much possibility, and so it's kind of, but the tension for me right now is just like, man, I got to just like be really head down, and like these are the guys. This is kind of like the top of the hierarchy of like who needs this most. And as I go, it's like, I mean, there's so many different things that I could do that would be really, really fun and really impactful, but also would, be additional streams of income, so merch, like lower level, like packages that aren't necessarily coaching, like retreats. I've had this idea of like, it was kind of funny. I had this idea for a long time of just, I would love to like go to churches and teach their staff this, or teach their congregation this framework, and I hadn't even told my wife that. And I was on like 2 or 3 different sales calls with these guys. And at one point they just stopped. These are different sales calls too. And they just stopped and they're like, dude, I have this vision of you like traveling all over the country and like teaching this to churches, and like so much more health and ministry will flow out of that. And I was just like, oh, okay. Like I receive it. All right, let's roll, and that was really, really crazy. So, that's the tension right now, it's just like, it's kind of managing the possibilities and what can happen. Right. Because I don't want to get so split that like, and that's all, I mean, even just to go full circle back of like, I certainly don't want to be working as much as I was, at this stage of life with 3 little kids, so there's so much of this where it's just like, what is like the heavy hitter? And that's how I would want anybody that's, thinking about entrepreneurship. Like, man, there are things that are like a very high return on investment of time. And there are things that are very low. So it's like, I'll meet these guys and they're like, man, I want to, start a side hustle. And they pick something that is like super, takes a ton of time and has a ton of overhead and like razor thin margins. I'm just like, dude, it kind of defeats the purpose. Like there are other things. You have all the time in the world to do that. But right now, like it's all about building a life where you have margin to be a good husband, to be a good dad, to be impactful in your community and in your church, and just being a healthy person, like that's the whole thing. And those things are there, but you need to be really tactical with what you're choosing across the board. So that's kind of the name of the game for me, just not spreading myself too thin and really just focusing in on what's going to build the life that I want for my family. So yeah.
For sure. Well, I can't wait personally for the Monolith merch to come out, because your branding and design work is on point. You also mentioned Raising Cane's a little bit earlier, which, Nick, that makes me think of some golden nuggets, man. You want to, should we land the plane here with a few golden nugget questions? You got time for that, Hunter?
Oh, yeah. I'm good.
Right. Yeah, let's do it. Absolutely. So same 4 questions we ask our guests every time. It's funny. We talk a lot about the 5 F's of abundant journey. One of them is fitness. So I'm not going to let you use that one since we've talked fitness. So pick one of these here that you are working on this year for improvement. So family, finance, faith, no fitness is an option in future. So pick one of the F's there and tell us how you're working on getting better.
Man, I'll say family for sure. Like right off the bat, man. I mean, I think there's a lot of, a big reset that's needed for me. Just again, burnout and working way too much and all that stuff. So it's kind of this big reset of that's first. Like that's got to be taken care of really well. So that's a lot of this. Like, so my Mondays, I'll be at home with my two little girls. Like that's amazing. Like that'll be great time. And I'm just mentally like, I'm just not gonna think about Monolith. Like I'm just, I might have a call here, there, whatever, but that's fine. And really, having that, spending that margin well, right? And so date nights, hey, let's go on trips. Hey, let's load everybody up. Let's go do something fun. And it's also given me, and it's really just all the practicalities of this, right? Of like, now I have this ability to, hey, if you want to book a call, it's 9 to 5 or 10 to 5 or 10 to 4 or whatever. And it's like, when everybody is here at the end of the day, like we're here, like no more, I'm not getting on calls unless somebody's like paying me. I'm not doing anything else. And so really it's just spending that time well, kind of resetting a lot of those expectations. There's a lot of development stuff I want to do. I've been listening to, there's a resource called Celebrate Calm. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of that, but it's kind of like a parenting kind of, it's super dense. This guy has like a million things to listen to, but I've really enjoyed that, so it's just a whole series on like parenting toddlers, or dealing with tantrums or all these things, and so it's like the unfortunate part of like, man, I have not been the best at a lot of those things. And so now it's this kind of opening an opportunity of like, man, I really want to invest in myself as a person, as a husband, as a father. And so it's going to be this, organizing the lifestyle and the structure where it's like, man, that's a big part of what I do every day, so it's just, it's reading, it's education. Like, I think I'm hiring a life coach, which will be really cool just for me. And again, like the return on that is huge because then it makes me more effective as a husband, more effective as a father, as a leader. And again, it goes back to that thing of like, man, I'm not going to ask you guys to do something I'm not willing to do. Like I'm going to put my money where my mouth is. I'm really going to do this. I'm going to be sold out on my education and my development. And I don't ever want to stop that. And that's the highest priority, and so work cannot get in the way of that. Other things can't get in the way of that. Cause I want to lead with a full cup. So yeah.
100%.
Oh, that's great. Great answer. And I don't say it very often, but all of those we talk about, they intertwine, just like you've continued to say so many times on the episode, between the faith, the fitness, the family, all of those, they're part of who we are. So That's great. Next one here. What's a quote from a book or mentor that stuck with you along your journey?
Man, this was pretty cool. I'll share this. This was, I told you about Scott Frazier earlier. He sent this to me on last Friday, which was my last day in ministry. And there was this really long text, but he sent me this, I'll just read it because this is really interesting. He said, "Last, I leave you with these words from the Spurgeon about risk and this missionary William Borden's mantra." And he said, this is William Borden's words. He said, "They who navigate little streams and shallow creeks know but little of the God of tempests. But they who do business in great waters, these see his wonders in the deep." And then he said, "Those who take small risks experience a small God. Those who do business in great waters experience a great God." And then he said, in regards to Borden, here was what was found in his journal before his death: no reserves, no retreats, no regrets. And so, I was reading that on Friday and I was just like, golly, like that's like 100%. That's beautiful. Cause I've literally been living that out, of just everything is such a like, man, I feel fully in control, 100% in control. Like, I know what to do. I do my job well. Money's coming in. It's fine. It's kind of like the golden handcuffs, but again, like I said earlier, it's like you leave so little margin for just like that expectation, like, Lord, you really have to come through in this time, And so, and it's safe, but you're experiencing this really thin reality is what I would say, And so now it's just this idea of like I said earlier, it's like, I just want to see what the Lord will do. And I think that like, I think he really, blesses that, whether you're like quitting your job and going overseas to be a missionary, or jumping out into this business, or you're, leaving a lot of wealth to just be a better father and better husband. Like, I think all of those things, it's like the Lord's like, he just, it's just that stripping away. And I think that's what I've been experiencing a lot lately. And it's very painful, but it just expands your reality so much of just, like, man, now there's this idea of, there's no more just like, yeah, that'd be cool. And it's more so like, man, the Lord's given me that vision to be like, okay, go and do it. You have everything you need, go and do it. The only reason it doesn't happen is if I haven't called you to it or you don't do the work. And that's it. Outside of that, you have every freedom, you have every right to go and chase something. And I think that's the biggest thing that these guys have helped me to realize is just, especially in the faith, right? Like it's not simply Jesus dying on our behalf and rising from the dead. It's also all of these gifts. It's also, we are surrounded by evidences of his goodness and kindness in our life, right? And all he's asking us to do is just to notice and just to see it. But we are so head down most of the time that we don't. And we think that there's no provision, there's no goodness, there's no kindness. And it's just like, dude, it's everywhere. It's all around you. And so for me, this whole season has been just like, I got to lift my eyes up, and that's it. And just see what's possible. And so, yeah, I hope that makes sense. But yeah, I thought that was 100%. Beautiful. I mean, there was one other one that I can't remember who said it, but I posted about this, but it's just, this is kind of my, like, I wake up and I'm stressed because I'm like, holy crap, what am I doing? Am I absolutely insane? And the quote says, I am one in whom Christ dwells and delights. I live in the unshakable kingdom of God. The kingdom is not in trouble, and neither am I. And just love that, dude. Love it.
Good for grounding and just
so grounding of just like, man, and it's like what I tell my guys all the time. It's like, man, in the end, we win. I mean, that's reality for us. And so it's just a matter of like, man, what do you want to make out of this? And do it. Mm-hmm. You have every right. You have every freedom. So just do it.
Get to work.
So, get to work, man.
So good.
Yep.
I like it. Next one here. What's a dream or goal that you have that you've not been able to make happen yet?
So I've thought about this a lot. It's like, I think the dream, the goal, I don't know, obviously if or when we'll get here, but the dream would be to own some land in the hill country here in Texas. And I'm just running this or running whatever else I'm involved in. And my wife she's a worship leader. She's insane songwriter. And I want to build her a studio, and I want her to write albums and just record them. And we have the means to just do that. And she can just do that. And we just live out and awesome. In the middle of nowhere and hunt and fish and, and have a gym. So there's a lot of those things. I think there's a lot of this, like, man, like I love Austin. We live out like a little bit outside of the city, and it's very, it's getting kind of chaotic even over here. So yeah, I don't know how any of that sounded, but, that a lot of that would be, it's just like, man, it's kind of chaotic here. I think we've just long been kind of feeling that, like, man, I just want to slow down, dude. Like, it's just, there's the pace at which everybody's living is really crazy. And I think for us, like, just kind of the dream is to be somewhere that really facilitates like a slower pace, more peace,
unhurried life.
Unhurried. I mean, that whole, I mean, that's, yes, absolutely. So, that's the dream. So yeah, I mean, obviously right now it's kind of like these stair steps of I've replaced and then, doubled and tripled my income, my salary. And so then it's just like, let's freaking 10x it, and then it's like, it kind of puts you in this position where it's just like, dude, everything's on the table. Like, do we want to move to the beach? Because we can if we wanted to. Do we want to move to the hill country? So we can if we wanted to, And so I think it's that kind of a thing of like, man, we can just, like, everything's on the table and we can just pray through it and seek wisdom and go wherever we need to go, because we have little babies and they're not getting any younger. And, we want to just have really, really good time and help them to, grow up in a great life. So, yeah.
That's great.
Sure.
As they make
Last
weird
one
little
here,
faces.
Hunter. At the end of your life, what do you hope you'll be remembered for?
Man, just somebody that showed others what is possible. I think that would be a big thing of just, obviously there's all the things we would all aspire to, just, faithfulness and consistency and discipline and long suffering, those things. But I think, what really excites me is to sit with somebody and then be like, dude, I never thought that this was possible for me until you helped me get there, and that fills me with a lot of excitement. And, that's the piece that, that's the goal. That's the goal with all of this, whether it's Monolith or another vehicle, is just like, man, it sounds weird, but I want Christians to dominate. I really do. Like, I want people that are filled with the Spirit and have biblical wisdom to go out and be the best leaders and the best husbands and wives and parents and, build the best institutions and be the best bosses. And, it's just like, what other option is there? Like, why would we leave that on the table? And again, we're not promised it. We're not, we don't have to have it even, but it's just the thinking of like, man, there's so many things that could be done with that. And so I want to be a person that always pours that in to others, where it's just like, dude, man, you have the Lord, you have the Spirit, like, you win right now, bro. Like, you do. Like, there's no other option. There's no worst case scenario for you. And so let's dream a little bit bigger. Like, let's think a little bit bigger. Let's have a bigger expectation, and let's go out and do something, man. And I'm in your corner, and that's who I want to be. I never want to be a person that's like shrinking people down, but it's like, hey man, like, I know you think this is like the cap, but man, that's not. Like, let's shoot bigger. And I want to help you. I want to help you get there. And so, yeah.
I love it, man. Well, you're well on your way. The Lord seems to really be blessing what you're building with Monolith. And man, I can't wait for us to check back in with you in a few months or in a year and just see how it continues to grow, how you continue to expand the influence, the number of folks that you're connecting with and inspiring. It's amazing. To that end, where would you send people that do want to follow you, that want to connect with you, that want to learn more about coaching? What are the best places for those folks to go?
Yeah, probably just Instagram. So it's just at Monolith Movement. That's the main thing I'm doing right now, just to keep it simple. But yeah, you can connect there. Hit me up there, and yeah.
I love it, man. Well, we will include a link in the show notes to your Instagram profile, but love what you're building. Keep up the good work, man. Listeners, thank you so much for coming along on this journey with us. Do connect with Hunter and also connect with us at abundantjourney.net. If you found value out of the content, which I'm certain you did, please subscribe, leave a review, share the episode with a friend. That helps us reach more people and hopefully inspire more entrepreneurship and investing for the good of the world. So thanks, everybody. We'll be back again soon.